President Trump is not happy about a new Republican ad released by the Lincoln Group. Now, the 60-second ad was published yesterday, and it takes quite a few shots at President Trump's terrible response to coronavirus. I want to show you that video, and then we'll discuss it.
There's mourning in America. Today, more than 60,000 Americans have died from a deadly virus Donald Trump ignored. With the economy in shambles, more than 26 million Americans are out of work, the worst economy in decades. Trump bailed out Wall Street, but not Main Street. This afternoon, millions of Americans will apply for unemployment, and with their savings run out, many are giving up hope. Millions worry that a loved one won't survive COVID-19. There's mourning in America, and under the leadership of Donald Trump, our country is weaker and sicker and poorer. And now, Americans are asking, if we have another 4 years like this, will there even be an America?
That, of course, is a devastating ad from a Republican group. And notice how it played off the old Reagan line. Ronald Reagan, of course, is famous for crushing the unions and introducing us to the failed trickle-down economics, helping this country, of course, get to this point where we are on the edge of an economic disaster. But hey, at least, Reagan was civil. Unlike our president, who, like Reagan, has similar policy proposals, trickle-down economics on steroids, deregulation, union busting, but Trump does do it in a louder way. Speaking of loud, the president took to Twitter to air his grievances about this particular ad. He said, a group of rhino Republicans who failed badly 12 years ago, then again 8 years ago, and then not badly beaten by me, political first-timer, 4 years ago, have copied no imagination. The concept of an ad from Ronald Reagan, mourning in America, doing everything possible to get even for all their many failures. Again, this is clear Donald Trump projection. You see these loser types don't care about 252 new federal judges, 2 great Supreme Court justices, a rebuilt military, a protected Second Amendment, biggest ever tax and regulation cuts, and much more. I didn't use any of them, any of the consultants, because they don't know how to win, and their so-called Lincoln Project is a disgrace to Honest Abe. I don't know what Kellyanne did to her deranged loser of a husband, Moonfaced, but it must have been really bad. John Weaver lost big for Kasich. Crazed Rick Wilson lost for Evan McMullen to me. Steve Schmidt and Reed Galvin lost for John McCain. Romney's campaign manager lost to Big O, and Jennifer Horn got thrown out of the New Hampshire Republican Party. They're all losers, but Abe Lincoln, Republican, is all smiles. I don't necessarily know if Honest Abe would actually agree with Donald Trump, especially since, for that time, Honest Abe was more of a liberal. Nonetheless, there is a reason, and this is part of what I feel like I'm breaking down here, or what I need to break down. The reason that Donald Trump won over so many working class Republicans is because he is nothing more than a salesman. Doesn't matter what he sells, it's essentially snake oil. He does it, and he does it very well for those who are able to listen or want to listen. The establishment Republicans hide the virulent racism of their party under a thin veneer of code words like urban, and to borrow a phrase from the aforementioned Ronald Reagan, the welfare queens. Donald Trump, unable to grasp nuance or have any sort of filter to his thoughts, speaks plainly, and, of course, has grown up steeped in racism. His racism and contempt for the social class he's not welcomed into on full display. Donald Trump has always wanted to have a place not only with the elites, but be the elitist of all the elites, and harbors a great hatred to those who never accepted a man with 6 bankruptcies and numerous failed businesses. What Trump did correctly is exploit a time in America where hatred of elites is at its highest point ever, and the establishment responded with running even more elites on both sides, Hillary Clinton being the worst and best example of that. However, the very policies Trump brags about are the exact same policies you would have gotten with Jeb Bush albeit with a slightly nicer face. The establishment's hatred of Trump doesn't reflect the odiousness of his policy positions. No. It's all about the establishment and what they actually value: civility, comedy, kindness towards your betters. It's the one thing besides shared economic interests that binds the Republican Party and the Democratic establishment together. And it's a war against the rude, the loud, and the uncouth. Make no mistake, Trump is not a champion for the poor or the working class. No, he is a loudmouth grifter who managed to bumble his way into office on the backs of those who are most hurting under the Trump administration. Fellow grifters like Kellyanne and George Conway were running at both sides and playing the game in order to enrich themselves. Kellyanne Conway is appealing, of course, to the pro-Trump crowd, while her husband, George, is playing the establishment and resistance crowd to a so far unknown end. Book deal? Perhaps. Future political aspirations? Maybe. Truly, only time will tell. But when it comes to the long game, Republicans have been very effective at pushing their ideology on an American public too caught up with survival. Perhaps the ultimate goal of the Lincoln Project and the Republican Never Trump resistance is to point out that in the future, when Trump is relegated to the embarrassment among the Republican electorate, as George W. Bush was until recently. In fact, I do recall a lot of Republicans who had voted for George W. Bush being embarrassed and not even being able to admit they voted for George W. Bush. The same for Republicans when it comes to Donald Trump. Later on in the future, I bet that there's a situation where a great deal of Trump supporters, or people who are now loudly cheering on Donald Trump, saying, what, me? No, I never voted for that guy. Someone did, but it wasn't me. These same people will be, of course, reined in by people like George Conway and Mitt Romney and others in the establishment on the Republican side when they say, we're not like Trump. We're not the party of Trump. No. We're back in charge now. The people who are civil. We are a new party full of civility and compassion while running, of course, on the same failed ideas of old. I have a feeling this is what this ad is all about. I mean, many of the things that the ad points out, the economic devastation of this country, were started, ironically, from Ronald Reagan and many Republicans following when it comes to, of course, their failed economic policy. And again, I have a feeling this is what this ad is all about. To rehabilitate the Republican Party, add into it two war criminals that they had rehabilitated, George W. Bush and the late John McCain, and the lionization of Mitt Romney, who had once indicted half of all Americans as lazy moochers. You remember that, right? And you have a cadre of terrible establishment Republicans waiting in the wings to rehabilitate this party that, frankly, has no business existing anymore. Now, this is less resistance against petulant disaster that is Donald Trump than the damage he has done to the party's image in embracing the worst of its own fan base. That base will exist after Donald Trump. And now that they've been unleashed, it will be very difficult for establishment Republicans to put them back in the bottle if they can at all. As for Trump, Trump will be Trump. He will complain, whine, and tweet as thousands of Americans continue to die for coronavirus, and all that while he continues to ignore it, such as the prices of incompetent, vain Republican leadership. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a patreon.com/TYTNation set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, You know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.